Hello, everyone. My special guest today is the wonderful Cynthia King, vegan dancer, choreographer, and teacher extraordinaire. I had the pleasure of meeting Cynthia at her studio in New York a few years ago and got to see firsthand some of the wonderful work that she's done. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So I'm just going to read Cynthia's bio just to give you an idea of the amazing things that she has done and continues to do. So Cynthia King has been a professional dancer since 1978, having trained at the Boston Conservatory and the Ailey School. She began teaching and choreographing in 1986 and founded the Cynthia King Dance Studio nearly 20 years ago. Based in Brooklyn, New York, the studio is renowned for its high-quality dance education, which includes ballet, modern, jazz, tap, b-boy, b-girl, hip-hop, and African dance, and its vegan ethics. Yes, CKDS is a vegan dance studio whose students are encouraged to embrace compassion to all beings through innovative choreography and performances. Cynthia also has her own range of vegan ballet slippers. Cynthia is heavily involved in the community, participating in and hosting many local events. She's a dedicated animal activist who proudly supports non-profit organisations, including the New York Coalition for Healthy School Food, Farm Sanctuary, and Vegan Outreach. In 2011, she was honoured by an official proclamation from council members of the City of New York and recognised for effective leadership and services to her community. 4 years later, she received the prestigious Boston Conservatory Distinguished Alumni Award and established the Cynthia King Humane Artist Scholarship, which is awarded to an incoming Boston Conservatory student who embodies compassionate and cruelty-free living. Cynthia, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to speak with you. You're amazing.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Oh, it's great that we're able to do this. We were just talking before we came on to the show about this is the next best thing. I would have loved to have been there in New York, and but it is what it is. But it's great that we're able to connect like this. So I know there's quite a bit out there about you and your dance and your studio and the incredible work that you're doing. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about you. So where are you from? Where did you grow up, and what was that like?
Well, I'm from here in the New York area. I was born in Paterson, New Jersey, but I grew up in Jersey and Brooklyn and Manhattan, and went to school in Boston. I moved around a little bit, and it's the place to be. I've never left. I was just thinking about how I'm sort of within 5 miles of where I've never really gone from this area. So I love being here. I love New York, and it was different growing up here back in the city has gone through some changes clearly, but I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
So what drew you to dance? Did you dance? Were you someone who took up dance as a kid or a bit later? Tell us a bit about how
I was really lucky because my mom was able to send me the first couple of years of my dance training was with neighbor kids who had gone to dance classes, and they would be my teacher because I couldn't go. But when I was able to go, my mom sent me to dance classes, and I, it's hard to even imagine, like I don't even remember loving it that much in the class setting, but I remember alone, I really loved it. Like I would pretend, and and also being in New York, I was very fortunate to be exposed to the great dancers and great dance companies, the Alvin Ailey company, and all the, I was inspired by so many dancers that, I lived in my own head, I fantasized and danced on my own quite a bit. And then, as I became a teenager, I was actually, it was between visual art and dance for me. Those were my two loves. And I thought, well, I'll dance because that career is shorter and quicker. And then once I finish my dance career, then I'll do some art. So it's really been during this lockdown, the last few months, that I was able to really revisit drawing and painting, which has been so great. Oh. But my dance career was much, much longer than I had anticipated.
Wow, that's amazing. So what do you get from dance? Like, what does it give you?
Well, I think it's, again, really, I feel fortunate that dance has all these extra gifts, like the fitness aspect of being in shape and healthy and strong. Those are kind of extra perks. But I think for me, it just gave me a connection to music, which was, I couldn't deny was a very crucial part of it, was just connecting with music, which I love so much. And, a way to, it's very, even though it's often an ensemble activity, it's also very solitary. And it made me feel just, connected in a way that I didn't always feel connected,
Connected to yourself, you mean?
Yeah, just feeling like, like you belong on earth in any way, like it was grounding in that way for me, and it still is. But it's kind of, it was kind of like I didn't have to think about it. And I cherish the fact that it's a nonverbal activity, because that's so important to me, to have a nonverbal way of expressing myself. Between visual art and dance and music, those are really, that's a really important aspect for me.
Yeah, I love that. So what type of dance did you do? So when you were growing up, was it ballet and, or modern? Like what kind of dance did you kind of gravitate to?
I have a modern foundation and ballet foundation. I studied Limon technique. I studied Graham technique, Horton technique quite a bit. And then ballet throughout that whole, and I really love ballet, but I never wanted to pursue it. I love doing ballet, but I don't like going to the ballet. I've always found it very boring. And I never liked the stories, I never related to anything about ballet except that I enjoyed the way it felt to do it and the challenge.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think I get what you mean. Like, I know that, like, I've done ballet and like I did a degree in performance art. I majored in dance and then I switched to drama for my final 2 years. But I know what you mean. It's like that feeling of actually doing it. But like, and maybe it is just that, I don't know, the stories, there's obviously, kind of patriarchal, stories, very white as well. And I would imagine for, kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a documentary Tracy and I are going to watch about the first Indigenous Australian to be like a principal in the Australian ballet. And it's like, it took them forever. And, there's all those kind of, things added to it. But the actual doing it, I get where you're coming from.
Right. My goal was never to, and it's irritating to have so much of the goal being, to be a principal. Like, I don't like the patriarchy. I don't like the companies that, they're brilliant. There are beautiful dancers, but those stories classical ballet is just, to me, very dull.
Yeah.
I never cared about anybody in the ballet. I never cared. No, I didn't care about the princess or the swan. I didn't care about
I know, I get where you're coming from, but I loved contemporary as well. I used to do evening classes at London School of Contemporary Dance, and we did some Graham technique, but also my favourite was a teacher that used to teach us Merce Cunningham technique. I used to love that. Yeah, amazing, wonderful.
That feels very similar to ballet in that, it's so linear and Cunningham's
fantastic. So what can you tell, because you've had this amazing career, you've been a professional dancer as well as a teacher and choreographer. So what can you tell us, maybe, is there any one or, a couple of anecdotes that you can share from us, any memorable moments in your dance career that you kind of look back and go either, oh my God, wow, that was so amazing, or something that was, I don't know, particularly moving, or anything that really kind of stands out as being particularly memorable?
Well, I think the highlights for me was dancing with Rod Rogers' company, because I got to travel with the company, and it was I couldn't believe it. It was a dream to be able to be dancing and being with dancers, and his work I found really beautiful. I never really felt like I measured up. There was so many, like, the dancers in the company were beyond me, and I always felt like I can't believe I get to dance with these people. They're so incredible. So those are, to me, that was such a highlight, because I just really appreciated his work, and to get to travel, and dance was a highlight. But when I think back on my career, and it's been so long, it's really true that when I was when I turned 30, I had this giant, like, career dilemma. And I thought, am I going to, like, what am I going to do? It's time to leave performance, I thought, because that was the magic age that you were done, you know. And I thought about it, and I realized that I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to leave and try something different. And I started teaching. And by far, this part of my career is the memorable and most significant and most satisfying, is the teaching half of my career, more than half.
Really?
I just love being with kids so much. I can't even describe it. And I love being with kids for their whole child. Like I have students that are my students for years, you know, and are not even directly mine, but in my school. So I know them and I know the whole family. And that part of my career has been so much more satisfying, gratifying, meaningful, and, you know, having those beautiful relationships with those kids has meant more than ever being a performer. I mean, being a dancer sort of pales to that.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I love that you share that. Do you think it's because you're coming like with dance? And this, it might be controversial saying that, maybe when you're performing, there's maybe ego involved, whereas when you're teaching, there's more service, or is that not the case?
Could be that, but I think there was just so much anxiety around being a dancer. There was so much anxiety, and, you know, a lot of it was self-imposed, but it's competitive life, and, you know, it's just, that part doesn't exist anymore, you know. And then you see results right away. I guess there, you know, part of it is your ego is involved in being a dancer, but just seeing results like right in front of you in the studio within the hour and a half that you're there is like, and seeing people make the connections and sharing the experience of what dancing is and connecting with music and connecting with each other. I mean, it's brilliant. It's beyond what I got from being a performer, way beyond.
I love that. I was going to ask you about that actually, because I know some of the children, you teach a whole variety of, you know, particularly young people. I think you do have some adult classes as well, but predominantly you tend to teach young people. And I know some of those come from disadvantaged communities, and you're able to have them, you know, experience dance. So I'm curious, what benefits have you seen that they get? Like, what changes have you seen in students?
Well, you know, we have a variety of students from varying economic situations and backgrounds, but I'm adjacent to a school where there are kids from very challenging situations, and, you know, kids living in shelters, like really, really struggling kids. And we have these kids come over from the school next door, and you know, I know it's the highlight of their day. And one of the things I see is that, you know, when you're in a dance class, at least when I teach, there's.
I know, I'm just laughing. She or he visited already earlier. And it's so cute.
Sometimes she sits on my shoulder.
Oh, that's all right. Absolutely. She can join in. What's her name?
Her name is Una.
Una. Hello, Una. Here we go. We'll just say hello to her. Okay.
But so you see, you know, in the way I teach, I know you know, I don't give free passes to people. I make sure that when I'm teaching that they are learning something and understand that there's definitely that there's a right way and a wrong way to a certain step that I'm teaching. But I also encourage the little moments of getting there, you know, a lot, especially kids that I know really need that encouragement and that positive reinforcement. And I know so many kids that just, it's like, you almost feel like you're the only person that said something like nice to them all day. Like there's so many difficult situations, and the public schools in the city there's overcrowded, and there's just like, they're so hungry for attention, you know. All kids are, they all want to talk. If you give them a minute to talk, we could talk for like an hour after class, you know. But I just feel like, you know, connecting with them, succeeding in moving in a new way or understanding a step, and giving them that feedback, that connection, it just, you can see it uplifting. You know, I wish I could be with them all day. I wish we could just dance all day, you know. So that's one benefit to the kids that are really in need. And I think just in general, having control over your body is an incredible gift and valuable aspect of life, you know. Having control over your body and having strong muscles, you know, for whatever revolution is coming our way, you need to have a strong body. And I really just, I even now, I just finished a workout about half an hour ago. I do these workouts at night with the parents of the kids. Like, I'm so into like being strong. We need to be strong, not just emotionally and psychologically. And, we need to really physically keep our strength and be strong. So I think that's one of the things that when I see kids, developing their bodies and their coordination, it's a long lasting gift.
Yeah.
It was for me. And they say, because it's almost a mystery, like, how do you get confidence? I always think like, oh, I want my kid to have confidence, so I want to send them to dance class. And I don't even usually think that through really too much until like now I'm thinking about it. It's because you're gaining these basic skills that you use in every minute of your day, to have the coordination to do something that somebody else might not have, and to have the swagger, the grace, stand up tall, and to, it's really is, the gifts are endless.
Yeah, incredible. And an expression, I guess, as well. You've seen, sometimes, on the dance competitions on the TV, you'll see people, kind of saying it, it just allows me to express myself, a bit like what you said, without, you don't necessarily having to talk, but it's a way to get in touch with your emotions and express that.
Yes, I value that so much. And so many times I meet with kids, and the mom will say, I'll say, hi, I'm Miss King, what's your name? And the kid will be shy and won't want to talk. And then the mom will try to get the kid to talk. And I say, you know what? Dance we don't need words here. You don't have to say your name. You really don't. And that, maybe you need that elsewhere. You probably need a little bit of those skills. It's so wonderful to have a place where you really don't, that's something, you don't need your words really. You just need your body and your energy and your effort,
Yeah, absolutely. So when and why did you become vegan?
Well, my vegan story starts, I was quite young, and I had a relationship with our dog who, I like the dog meant so much to me. And again, it was that nonverbal connection, that wordless communication I had with this dog. And one day I was 10 years old, and it just dawned on me that there was an animal on my plate. I hadn't really thought about it until then. And then as soon as I realized it changed the trajectory of my life. It changed everything. And it's funny because people wonder, like, when I was a kid, how was it to have meals when other people were eating meat? And it wasn't an issue really, because I was on my own quite a bit, usually like by around 10, 11, where a lot of us latchkey kids, they used to call it, your family was working. And so I was fending for myself and my sibling, and it wasn't hard to not eat meat. It just wasn't hard. I just ate other things. What wasn't meat, I ate. And then eventually, as I got older and I made the other connections, I used to think that I don't think I realized the suffering of animals. Now I think it's the number one, my most compelling conversation I have with people when they want to talk about veganism and they're not vegan, is the dairy industry, and how, it's probably the worst thing of anything, So eventually, I made all those connections, and it's been a driving force. My whole family's vegan, everybody, extended family, my kids, my husband, and it was life altering really to have made the connection. But then once, I guess around when 2000s rolled around, and then there was social media and all of the things on the internet that people could see, and you could see the videos, and you could really share the information more clearly. So my story into activism got much more. I got more active in the times when I could connect with other people in the streets, and my kids have been out there with me since they were very young, and that was good for them. And it's important it's important to have compassion and be an empathetic person, you know? So, yeah, it started young for me.
Yeah, so it's a very similar story to me. I was eating a beef burger and I said to my mum, what's it made of?" When you said it was a cow, I was
Yeah.
horrified because I was very connected with my cat as a kid. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, when kids can be horrible and go, "We're not your friend," whereas, you know,
Right.
animals would, you know what I mean? I had that, you know, I would say my best friend in my childhood was my cat Kitty. I can see we've got another visitor. Is that Una or is that another one?
Yeah, she's a little sweet little one-eyed cat.
Oh, hello, beautiful. So, for those of you listening on the podcast, you're not going to see, but check
Oh,
out the YouTube video and you can see the beautiful pussycats. Yeah, so very similar. And again, with the dairy, I agree with you. When I got involved in the feminist movement, I was just like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? How did I not know that? It took me a few years. I'd been involved in the feminist movement, you know, campaigning for, you know, women's autonomy over our own bodies. And then when I found out that, I felt guilty for a long time. I was like, oh my gosh, how could I not have known that? So I know what you mean. The dairy industry for me as well, it's like a real, you know, really horrible. Now, I know that you run a vegan dance studio. So I'm curious, how does that play? Because you're in Brooklyn. And I remember when I came to see you, you said, you're in real Brooklyn. Which made me laugh. So yeah, so not the trendy kind of gentrified. You're in real Brooklyn. But so how does that play out? Because I know that you require the children to wear vegan ballet shoes, and you know, your shows, you choreograph amazing shows like making, you know, around factory farming and, you know, children dances. So how does that play with, like, not only the kids themselves, but also the parents? Like, do you get kind of pushback? I mean, you've been running for nearly, you know, 20 odd years, so I'm guessing you don't much, but I'm curious how you've handled that, to be, because that's quite bold as a dance studio, you know, to really kind of bring in those vegan ethics.
Yeah, you know, surprisingly, it's not been very difficult. Many people, you know, I have literature everywhere you look. So I give them literature. If they don't agree, or if they, you know, they don't usually say anything about it. I think it's not so, certainly nowadays, it's not very unusual to talk about plant-based stuff. I mean, that's kind of popular. So it's a little less, you know, I mean, I think over the years, people have said to me, people say things like, well, I already have ballet shoes. I already have slippers. Why can't she wear those? And I'll say, well, this is the required shoe. It's my signature shoe. And this is what we wear here. We don't wear leather. We're cruelty-free, you know, studio. And, you know, without even going into the entire background of why that is, other play, like, I mean, you go to soccer, they tell you what the required what clothes is. So I'm just telling you what my requirement is. So I think people just, because of the way I say it, it's like that's it, you know.
Yeah.
They really can't argue. You want to dance here, this is what you wear. Some places you want to dance there, you wear a blue leotard, that's what you wear, you know. So this is what you wear on your feet. So I haven't really gotten very much pushback about it. And, you know, if people push back about it, this might not be the place for you. You know, like, I'm happy to say, like, send you on your way. You know, I'm teaching lessons about caring for one another, having compassion and empathy, you know, anti-bullying messages. Like, if you're opposed to these messages, we might not be a good match.
Right.
You know? So I really haven't had that much. I haven't had that much pushback you know, about it. You know, I also do other very, you know, political pieces, and about 4 years ago, we did a piece which is now really one of our signature pieces. It's about police brutality, gun violence, and it opens up with the children, the young children dancing with their fathers. It's a father and daughter dance, and then within 30 seconds, the men get shot and killed on stage. So, and then the piece, I designed this costume, which is a tutu made out of crime scene tape, and
Wow.
so it's this bright yellow, you know. So it's a very big piece, lots of people in it. But when I first proposed it, some of my staff members were like, you sure we're going to shoot the dads like within 30 seconds? I'm like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I've gotten pushback from that one. And I got some random like messages from like some random racist relative that was at the show and complained that they thought it was not appropriate or something, you know, ridiculous. So,
it's interesting that, because I don't know if you heard about the Britain's Got Talent diversity show. They did a big dance around Black Lives Matter, around the George Floyd, and they had, apparently there were 15,500 complaints, from people saying it should. Do you remember? Yeah, it's quite recently, and they said, oh, it should be entertainment, not political. Why is it important for art and creativity to shine a light on social issues?
Well, I mean, it's the same as with veganism. I mean, if it's important, you want to get it out wherever you can. So I also, at the same time, I don't want to be pigeonholed into that we have to be the only ones to make statements, that all of our work has to be a statement work, because I want, as an artist, also want to do abstract work. I don't want to be relied on to be the one to always bringing a message. But I think, there is a tradition of the arts bringing the message, so for me it's important. And also it's important because I have an audience, I have a wide group of people that I can reach and speak to. So that I need to utilize that, that opportunity,
Yeah.
So but and I think, back to the idea of that it's bold. I mean, if I was to worry about what people thought about that, I wouldn't be very much of an activist, for one thing. I mean, if you're out in the street yelling in front of, Canada Goose, you really don't, you can't be caring that people think you're a loud, bushy bitch. You know what I mean? But so, I don't really care. In fact, I welcome the pushback, because that means that's somebody that I'm ready to talk to. And, I don't want everybody that agrees with me, then it's kind of boring. So
yeah, and I like the fact that you can take that stand and say, well, okay, we might not be the right studio because then you're attracting the people, you know what I mean, who are a fit with you. But I guess I meant that it's a bold decision, because as maybe a new dance studio, people might think, oh, you're kind of you want everybody in, you don't want to get this reputation and people boycott you or whatever. But so I love the fact that you've just kind of stood in that, and you've taken your stand, and it's been a success for you, and that people are attracted to come to your studio.
Yeah, I think I did that also. I not only in the veganism, but I think one of the things about my studio and about the business is that I always felt like there's something there. It's a very big city, and there's a lot of different studios, so you might as well do the one you want. I mean, you're going to definitely be putting in a lot of hours. If I'm going to be doing this 7 days a week, I want it to be just what I want, and I don't really care about anything else. Like, I just, even the pricing, people would complain, and it was really hard in the beginning to say, like, hey, this is what it's going to cost, because we do a lot of extra things, and because I don't have to tell you why. Actually, it's a quality place. If you want to study here, this is what it costs. Trust me, and if what you want is a place that doesn't cost this much, or something, I can tell. I'm friends with everybody. I can send you to someone else's studio in a heartbeat, because there's a million different places to study. But a business like a studio, like a school, you really, I would never want to do it any other way than just the way I want to do it.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you find that I know you mentioned to your friends with everyone, do you find there is that collaboration in the dance world? Because, like with theatre, the arts world, there's this idea that, it's really competitive. People will push other people out of the way to get the part. What's been your experience around that and collaboration?
That does exist, but I haven't found it. I think part of it is also having confidence. And if I'm going to also, I danced my whole life. So if dance gives you confidence, I better be a good example of that. So I'm confident that, we can be friends, and you can attract your students and I can attract my students. So, and I mean, I don't have a million friends, but I feel like I'm colleagues with other dance studios. Yeah. I've always been happy to send someone who doesn't fit or doesn't, want to dance with me to somebody else who I know has a quality school. I mean, it's New York. We have a lot of good schools,
Yeah, nice. I love that. Now let's talk a little bit about community, because it's kind of all wrapped up that you are so, like you said, you're living not far from where you grew up. So community is obviously really, really important to you, and you're very active in the community. Why is community so important? What does it mean to you?
Well, I think, I mean, especially now, first of all, we do get things done by changing laws and legislative issues are important for any kind of change in our city. So politics, local politics to me is very important. So community to me means being active in my local, with my elected officials. And, I try to encourage people to do that too, because, there's the big picture, there's the big politics, there's the big drama and horror that's going on in our country right now. But then there's the stuff that we can really dig into in our own neighborhoods. And, I've always been active in my own, in the local politics and things that we want changed in our own neighborhood. We must be together as a community to make those changes. And we've done some great things. I was thinking about this before we talked that, my dancers, there was a lot of activism around the circus a few years back when the circus was came to Brooklyn. And so it was a very simple and smooth protest to bring dancers to, because it's a kids event. So there was a lot of kids going in and out to the circus. So I explained to my dancers who were very young, they're mean I didn't have to be too gruesome. I said, they're mean to the elephants. I mean, who wants to support anybody who's being mean to the elephants? This is a terrible thing. So the kids made signs, and we all got dressed in our costumes. We went down, we did demonstrations down at Barclay Center. And it took a few, it's been a long time. I mean, I was doing it before then, but when I started bringing kids, it was really great for them to be active. It was many times it was the first time they'd been to a protest or demonstration. And then within like a couple of years, we had success, and Ringling Brothers was legislation was passed banning the use of wild animals in the circus, the abuse of wild animals in the circus. So the kids got to have this wonderful experience of being active, making their own signs, going down protests, and then success. So it was like great. Like, I'm so thankful that it happened like that, because I'm sure their little activist selves are now going to feel that they can, initiate some changes. So to me, that's the most important part of community.
Yeah, I love that. Because, in like cities like New York, and I don't know if this is the case where you are, but certainly is, even where I am in Sydney, like you're in apartment blocks, and certainly in London where I was from, it's gotten to like when I was a kid, like, you knew your neighbours, you called them auntie sons, you'd go in and out of one another's houses, you'd leave your front door unlocked. Whereas now it's kind of like, we're in our little cocoons and we don't even necessarily know our neighbours. So, and I think that's quite sad. So, I mean, how is that for you? Like, is that something that you kind of actively try and encourage, like, where you are?
Well, I mean, the studio is really a hub for people always say that about the dance studio. They say, that there's such a community here. So because, it's the whole family, it's the child, and then I know everybody in the family. So it feels good to be a part of that. I mean, I'm a part of a few different communities. I'm also in the recovery community. I don't know if you know that about me, but I'm clean and sober for many years, and I'm active in that community too. And we need each other. That's how we stay on the beam. We stay together. So there are, and the vegan community is nice and tight in the city. But yeah, I mean, it is important. It's very easy to feel isolated, and it's not good to feel isolated. It can bring around some bad things. We lost a few people this year to suicide, young people. I lost one of my dancers, 17-year-old dancer, and a brilliant dancer. His name was Lachlan Brooks, and he went on from my school. He was dancing at ABT. And then we just lost an activist as well to suicide. And, isolation especially people that were so much more prone to depression during the pandemic. I've heard those statistics, but I also feel it. I feel it. I know what it's like. So I think it doesn't have to be a big giant community, but you have to be able to connect at least with a few other people.
Yeah,
You know?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So can I touch on that then? I didn't know that about you, that you're in the recovery community. So was that when you were teaching as a dancer? What kind of happened there? Like why do you think you were, I don't know if it was alcohol or whatever it was, if as much as you're comfortable sharing, of course, how did that kind of come about? Tell us a little bit about that time in your life and how you got clean and sober.
Yeah, I have that's a bumpy road story, but I initially got clean and sober at a very young age. I was 22 years old, and I had been a drug addict, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And it was really, I learned a little bit from dancers in the dance world, but when you're wired this way, it is classified as a disease, and some people describe it as an allergy. But if you have addiction, and I am quite sure people watching and listening know what I'm talking about. If you have addiction, you have it. You just do. So I'm glad to know I have it. And then I had a relapse, and then I regained my sobriety again. But clearly through connecting and connecting with other people who are likely similarly addicted. Yeah. So it's a bumpy road. I actually, I don't talk about it that much. I'm glad actually to talk about it, but I feel like usually when you do share it, someone hears it that is helped by hearing it. It's sometimes, there's hope shared from hearing that somebody has been addicted and is now living, in recovery. And there's nothing better than that, because it's a great, it's a daily reprieve, we call it, from a hellish, horrible disease.
Yeah, I love that. You're an inspiration and a role. And you're right. I think people do often, when people see someone they see as successful, what I mean? We kind of make assumptions that, they probably had it fairly easy kind of thing, whatever. And so I think to hear that, it's kind of like, okay. And like you said, anyone listening or watching who's, dealing with those issues, or like you say, has addiction, can really kind of take inspiration and hope that it is possible to change. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's really.
And I just want to say, if there's a way for them to connect, if anybody is having a problem with alcohol or drugs right now, listening or watching, I guess they can reach me through my website or on Instagram, message me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly put a link. That's a really generous offer. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. So we've got just a few little more questions and we'll wrap up. So arts and creativity, they're often not seen as, arts and creativity and business don't necessarily go together in the same sentence. I know there's the kind of trope that exists that only if you're a real artist, you'll be broke kind of thing. And, I know a lot of creatives and artists kind of, and Victoria Moran, who I think is a good friend of both of ours, would say something similar. It's like, you want to do that creative side of thing and the business side, with numbers and stuff. It's not and I feel the same, similar. It's not our natural kind of domain. So I'm curious, how have you kind of handled that challenge of being someone who's obviously incredibly creative with running it's a creative business. It's a dance studio, as you said, it's a business. How have you kind of handled that?
Well, it's funny. We were just writing something on the website. It's on the website now that talks about when you're creative, you innovate, you think of ways to work with what you have. So I feel like if you're an artist or if you're creative, you got it made in so many ways, because all you're doing is problem solving all the time anyway, so I think it's an incredibly important part for me of the business is creative. I think it's something I've always just fallen back on. I always say, like, I don't never run out of ideas. I run out of time, and I run out of resources, maybe people that need to help bring these things to fruition and stuff. But in the business too, what I think has been very helpful is that I love having other people around me that have other strengths that are very useful in the business. So I have an incredible team of, like, the manager, Vanessa Gordon is the manager of the studio, and Octavia McCormick-Sharf has been the managing director for many years. And these women are so, like, incredibly smart, and they they are smart in the things that they're smart at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we all are able to bring the best of, you know, the things that we're good at and meld it together so that the business works, you know.
Yeah. Did you find you had to learn a little bit more about, like, 'cause I'm thinking of people who are just starting out who maybe can't afford to hire someone else quite yet. Did you have to kind of at least get a little bit of a handle on the business side of things before you're able to employ people to kind of really help you
Yeah,
run
you
it?
know, I think of it in a very simplistic way. Like when I started, I still think about this, but luckily I have other people doing the hard work, the heavy lifting. But I remember just thinking like, all I really have to do is bring in more than I put out. I mean, basically, that's like, to me, that was, that's it. Like, I didn't think of it in a very complex way. I had to figure out things like, you know, learn that you have to hire a carting company to take the garbage away. I didn't know that. So those things, you know, you learn along the way. Like, you know, you have to pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
You have to start. But I think it was really the most simplistic way. I had to like, more has to come in than goes out. That's like,
I love that.
I
Yeah.
was like, that's basically it. And then I remember going to some things, and I remember people saying, you must have a business plan written or you're going to fail. Like they were adamant about, you must have a business plan. You must. Well, I've never had a business plan. I've never written a business plan. I probably don't even really know what it is. I'm guessing I kind of know what it is. I just never did it. I just said like, this is what I want to do. It costs this much. In order to pay that much, it has to cost this much to other people. It was like, okay.
Nice.
Like, this is really very simple. I didn't complicate it. And then you know, when I was able to hire other people, and I did hire people before I was able to, like I had faith that getting, you know, paying for them to come on was going to help to bring in more, you
Right.
know,
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have it ahead of time. They did help bring it in, you know. But I really, you know, I do see it in a pretty simplistic way. I am not a great business person, even though I mean, I guess I've run a successful business for many years, but when I like, you know, mingle with other business people, I don't even know the language. I don't know the language of business. I hear them talking about things and I'm like when I watch Shark Tank, I'm like, I don't think I can work. I don't really know what they're asking.
I like that, but I've heard a few people say that, like, you know, successful people who haven't done the business plan thing. So I personally quite like hearing that, I have to say. So
Also, I'd had a shoe business for 18 years. I'd had a
yeah.
shoe business too. Like that's what I think about in Shark Tank. The language I probably should learn that language, but I don't really know it.
Awesome. So these are the last few questions. These are just 3 questions that I ask everyone. They're kind of like short, like rapid fire kind of short, quick answers. So what does leadership mean to you, and what style of leader are you?
I think the first word that came to my mind was compassion and empathy. So I think I don't, you know, I know I'm a leader in the dance studio, in the classroom, but the way that I run the studio, I think it's more, I try to share. I don't see myself quite as a leader as maybe other people see me.
I think there's one thing about leadership, or one thought about leadership, is that you help to create other leaders. And I think you definitely do that, because you're doing that with all your students, however that might look for them, whether it's leading their own lives or in their own community. So
I feel that, and I do think actually that's something I'm kind of good at. But I also think of myself as, and this is a little bit of recovery language, to think of yourself as a worker among workers. And it's kind of an equalizing, it keeps your ego in check. You always think of yourself as a worker among workers.
I love that. What do you love most about yourself?
The being creative, because it's such a, you know, cure-all, you know. So I was going to say first, my art, my being an artist is one of those top things for me. Yeah, I think that would be it.
Nice. And just finally, what have been maybe 1 or 2 key lessons that you've learned about yourself or about life that you would like to share with other vegan women leaders?
Well, since we just talked about it, I'd say to not isolate, to connect with other people. Um, I think that's really important. Um, and to not be afraid. I mean, I really, you have nothing to lose by just, you know, saying the boldest thing that you can possibly say about what you want, people to hear. Like I don't tiptoe, you know what I mean? Like just, you know, I know I've heard other people that are afraid, like you had said earlier about just saying the message of the studio, and is that risky? And, we don't have anything to lose, you know. So, just do it. Just, yeah. And then if you're afraid, do it anyway. That's the thing. It's not fair to say don't be afraid, because we all are afraid. It's just to do it anyway, because you're never going to find a time that you're not,
Yeah, for
afraid.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh, you've shared some wonderful insights, Cynthia. You've been very generous in sharing about you. I've learned new things about you, and you even more amazing than I thought. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can we find you online?
Well, the website is cynthiakingdance.com.
.com.
And that's the same for Instagram.
Excellent. We'll put links to those on the show notes page for sure.
And then there is a contact page on the website that has my direct email. So you can directly contact me there or DM me on Instagram, and I will definitely respond.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's been a real pleasure.
Katrina, this was really fun.